YouTube. I'm going to be honest with you. I was a lot more enthusiastic to do this video earlier in the day. Unfortunately, I got bogged down in meetings. Then I went out to run some errands on the other YouTube channel that I have. I opened up a box of AEW SP game used, which I was looking forward to, actually. Today's release day for this. I was looking forward to it. Was it a bad box? No. It was kind of a mediocre box. It wasn't great. But the reality is that tempered my enthusiasm just a little bit because I was trying to find the energy for this. Because if I had been able to do this earlier in the afternoon, I would have had a lot more energy for this. The biggest problem that I have is that this is a 50-minute interview. Now, obviously, if you're reading the title in the thumbnail, then you already know that this is going to be my response, my reaction to the interview done on the Geoff Wilson Show YouTube channel, where our good friend Jimbo joins Geoff in another bout of unintentional comedy. And I did promise, if you see the background on the outside of it, I did say if a part 4, and this is unofficially a part 4, I would begin the construction of the Content Gods megachurch. And we are in progress. It is happening. We have the outside of it right here. You can see it right before your eyes. So here I am, and I'm going to do the will of the Content Gods, as I often do on this channel. Now, with that all said, there are a lot of people that say, but Carlos, hasn't this topic been beaten in the ground? Can we stop talking about shill bidding and all these things? Well, first of all, also on the thumbnail, you will notice the Godfather 3 reference. And if you know, you know. Also, I understand that a lot of you prefer to see cards. And that's basically what you want to see in a sports card channel. So I got you covered. So here's some XFL. So see, here's some cards. See, cards. Okay, we're done now. Because I want to talk about this, because this is Content God Christmas. And despite my lack of energy, I have brought the IPA. I'm going to make this happen. We're going to do it. I have sped up this video to 1.5 times because Content Gods or not, I do not have the patience to deal with this in real time. Hence also why the beer is here. But we're going to do it. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to stop every minute because realistically I could parse out every single syllable of this. We are covering a lot of the same ground, so I'm not necessarily going to spend a lot of time on that. There are certain specific pieces, though, that I do want to push back because, of course, our good friend Geoff did not do that. Not surprisingly, he didn't do it, so now it's going to be the job here to push back and point out the inconsistencies, the slightly changing stories, the fact that we simply cannot get past a specific element, that thou shalt not bid on one's own shit. It's really simple, and yet we need to make it complicated because we insist on digging a hole deeper and deeper for absolutely no reason, when in reality the move would have just been to let this go and move on. And yet here we are. And again, when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in. So let's get this queued up here. So for everybody's benefit, I did skip ahead because, of course, there's an Arena Club ad at the beginning of this. So we're almost 2 minutes into this. So we saved a little bit of time. And I have it sped up to 1.5x. So hopefully if you're not watching this sped up, it doesn't cause you too much trouble. Because, again, I couldn't deal with this in real time. Let's get this cracked open. I'm going to hit play, and we're going to make this happen. May the Content Gods smile down upon us all.
Beckett, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Geoff.
It's an honor to have you on today, and there's been a lot of conversation, certainly started over the last few weeks around shill bidding, and a lot of this originated with your interview with PRyan a few weeks ago. And I know you recently put out a new podcast last Wednesday, which we're going to talk about, where you clarified some of your thoughts around there and kind of expanded on it. Were you surprised when you put those first 2 episodes out with PRyan a few weeks ago? Were you surprised with the amount of conversation and, in some cases, backlash that those episodes created?
Well, I wanted to get a conversation about shill bidding. It's out there. It's wrong, but there's some nuances to it. Some parts of shill bidding are way, way worse than others. They're all bad. They're all illegal. But I don't think people can even agree on what the definition of shill bidding is. And until we do that, you're just saying, hey, it's wrong. Of course it's wrong. So yeah, I titled the episode "Shill Shocked," but I didn't realize I was going to get shill shocked. I just thought, I thought Patrick had been shill shocked that he had made a accidental mistake.
Okay, now I'm going to pause here. Of course, we're back to the whole idea of an accidental mistake, which I can only speculate on. The reality is all we have is the evidence that was presented for us previously. I've already covered this extensively on this channel. Links in the description, all that good stuff. We're not going to go into that again. The point is that the PRyan thing specifically, really all we're going off of and what we're talking about is what was admitted to and also the screenshot that showed the outbid. So we know that definitively there was at least one situation where he bid on his own cards that were consigned through acquire.co. These are facts that are known. These are facts that are documented. We can say it definitively because we have the screenshots and we have the conversation where he admitted to that and all that. The problem is, and goes back to this whole intent thing that Beckett is obsessed with. The problem is we have to then take Patrick Ryan at his word, which again is fine if you want to do that. But the problem is we can't judge intent. We don't know definitively. And at no point, and this conversation will emphasize that and put an exclamation point on it, he doesn't really definitively know that this is the only time it's happened. He doesn't definitively know that it was an accident. He's assuming it's an accident, which is fine. He's entitled to that belief, and that's completely fine. I can't definitively say it wasn't an accident. But the thing is, we're back to judging intention, which we can't do because we have no way of being able to judge intention. But I'm going to go back to what I said previously, is that he keeps talking about all these nuances and everything. The reality is that the action itself causes a manipulation of what would otherwise have been an auction had you not interfered. We're acting as though this is one of those situations where we need to constantly be considering all these mitigating circumstances and these edge cases and these alternate scenarios. And, well, it's not fair that you're not leaving room for all this nuance and everything. The reality is, and I'll repeat this at the end, but I'll do it here at the beginning, just to quickly clarify my position overall on this thing. What it comes down to, the reason why I came up with that little rule, and it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, but at the same time it also really works surprisingly well, is that if you follow the idea of thou shalt not bid on one's own shit, without qualifiers, without nuances, without all these gray areas that Beckett needs so desperately in these conversations, because apparently it's so important to him that we have these nuances. If you do that, if you literally follow that, you will never go wrong. You will never have to have these bizarre conversations with yourself like, but is it really wrong? Is it wrong in this? And that? You don't even have to worry about it. If you just avoid the situation entirely, which is effectively what I'm advocating for, then you're always going to be in the right. There's no way that you don't have to worry about the mitigating circumstances. You don't have to worry about the parties involved. You just stay out of it. If you're consigning the item or it is your item, you shouldn't be involved in the bidding of it. You shouldn't really be dealing with anybody doing any bidding on it. The reality is you should let nature take its course, and whatever happens, happens. Now, there's one specific scenario he's going to give in this conversation where, again, he's trying to make excuses for it. He's trying to give like, well, there is this specific case, and we'll get to that when we get there. I'll tell you right now, I reject this entire argument out of hand, and I'll explain to you more in depth why when we get to it. But the very beginning, we're already starting off with the same concept again, that, oh, these nuances, I wanted to start a conversation, all that. That's not really the way it came off. Maybe at this point, it would be worthwhile to kind of listen to how you're coming off and maybe find another third party that can give you, hey, this is what it's sounding like the way you're talking. And every time you seem to talk about this, it's not actually making it sound better. There are some folks that are inclined to just agree with everything he's saying regardless. They want to give him an out, so they're going to look for every little nugget. The problem is I've already listened to certain parts of the story that he's talked about and certain examples he's given changed multiple times or slightly alter, or this detail is this way, and then you were doing it this way. And we've already documented them. So the reality is I don't give you a lot of credibility for me when I'm listening to you. So here we are once again with yet another venue, a very friendly venue, where he can try to give his story again in another way, even though he did a podcast to clarify his position. He already gave a clarification podcast, and apparently we need a clarification to the clarification, which, if nothing else, suggests that the messenger is not doing a very good job conveying his message. If people still seem to be kind of confused about it or don't seem to be agreeing with the thesis you keep trying to hammer home. Okay, let's continue.
And he did, certainly. And he, obviously you talked about that during the episode. But yeah, there was it certainly started a lot of conversation and chatter. Probably, have you had previous episodes? You've done what, hundreds and hundreds of these, of the Dr. James Beckett Sports Card Insight podcasts.
Over 1,400, Jeff. The number of episodes is at the beginning of the title. You can just look at the beginning of the title and it tells you how many episodes. But anyway, moving on.
Have you had any other episode along the way that's gotten the amount of conversation started as this one did?
Not even close. As you already knew the answer to that question. But I don't try to be controversial, but I want to express sports card insights from my perspective, and I have a very reasoned perspective about the whole bidding process and how price guides and what prices are important to vet or to be included in what comps really should be. So, yeah, I got way more feedback. The disappointment, not that it wasn't constructive. As you know, you've been on the receiving end. I can deal with constructive. That when you said that, why did you say that? I don't agree. It wasn't that. There were more attacks, and frankly, a lot more attacks on Patrick. And he can defend himself. I'm not here to defend him, although I felt like that's part of what the problem is. That I was defending a friend. I didn't have all the information. I still don't have all the information. But if I'm guilty of defending a friend, then I've done that frequently.
All right. So real quick before I continue on it. So remember, he's saying he's defending a friend. Now, I am going to give you a quick reminder. Again, this isn't even necessarily meant as a rebuttal to the overall situation, but I do want to make sure that we touch on this from episode 1457, which was his response to the part 1 and part 2 with Patrick Ryan, where he described it. Listen to this brief description of his relationship with Patrick Ryan. Remember, he's defending a friend. But at the same time, let's get the description here and let's listen to how that goes. I'm going to repeat this one for you one more time here.
Lot of discussion. First of all, PRyan and I are friends, but we're not best buds. We don't know each other that well. We're very different in our personalities and very different in how we hobby. However, one of my longtime, really good friends, roughly my age, highly respected, very successful, vouched so strongly for Patrick many years ago. I took that into account. And usually, in fact, almost always, my friends my age I see around town, they know I'm a lifer for sports card collecting, and they frequently will tell me, I've got a friend I know that collects and he'd love to meet you. But this friend that turned out to be Patrick's mentor since college, I gave this very strong vouch for Patrick and said, Jim, I've got a collector friend that you need to meet. He may want to meet you, but you need to meet him. He's been very successful and he's really into it. So I met with Patrick. And again, he's different from me, very intense. He's even bombastic.
So again, I'm just reiterating, I'm taking the very words that were included in the podcast episode. We don't know each other that well. It was predominantly based off of this vouch from somebody else that he presumably trusts, which I said in my previous response to that particular podcast is perfectly fine. That's fine if that's how you want to do your business. But I'm not sure I stick my neck out on the line for somebody who I don't know that well. You know, we're friends, but we're not super close. And it was predominantly through a vouch to another third party, which is fine. Again, you do you, however you want. But then we're doing a spirited defense on your own podcast platform on behalf of this person that we're not super close to. Not my words, his words. They're not super close. Which again, hey, however you want to approach your business is perfectly fine by me. That's okay. But I just wanted to make sure we clarified that point since that was the beginning of his discussion in this point here.
So this last Wednesday, you came out with a podcast called More Shill Enforcement, and you were, I think, very clear in this last podcast. You said shill bidding is not okay. Bidding on your own cards, whether offensive or defensive, is not okay. Getting your friends to bid on your cards to drive up prices so you get better sales outcomes, that's not okay. I think some people felt that maybe there was, the first time you did the show with Patrick, maybe you were maybe making a defense for defensive shill bidding and saying, well, shill bidding in certain cases actually may be okay. But then this last episode, it seems like you said, let me clarify, very clear, very black and white, shill bidding is not okay, whether it's offensive or defensive, if you're bidding on your own items.
My comments were mixed together with Patrick's. Patrick and I had no rehearsal. We just, just turned on the microphone and started talking. And so when I was talking about defensive shill bidding, now in hindsight, a poor choice of terms, he has a different definition of even what that is. I'm talking about situations. In fact, the only situation I referenced was one when an item was mislisted. It was mislisted, and it was at a stage in the auction where it could not be withdrawn, and it was the only time in my whole life I've been tempted to put in a bid and say I want that back.
Okay, real quick, I want to pause here. I'm going to take his phrasing here at face value, which is perfectly fine. But I am going to point out, and in the comments section, Dan's Vintage Baseball did point out that he also had a story regarding Probstein consigning an item on behalf of a friend of his, and he went into this whole elaborate thing. I'm not going to play that whole clip again. I did it on the previous one, but just to be clear, we did talk about this already. But in that conversation, he asked him if he would be okay if he bid on these items because he was interested in some of those items. And at that video, I specifically said, well, if you're so interested in the items, you're the one consigning for your friend here. Why didn't you just offer him the money directly if you were so interested in it? And again, what it comes down to is we cannot judge intent. That's going to come up again here. We cannot judge intent. I have no idea if he would have bid on it had Probstein given him the green light and told him to go ahead. There was a whole back and forth on that. We discussed that on the previous video where we were talking about it. But at the same time, why are you even asking? You're consigning it now. Whether it's your friend's cards or not, you're consigning it to Probstein on their behalf. You are the consigner of note, of record. So even though the cards are not yours, quote unquote, the reality is, why are we asking if we can bid on one of these things? At the very least, we're giving it some thought. We're giving it some consideration. I can't get all the way to intention to get in your head and be able to figure out whether you would have done it or not. The reality is, though, you did ask. So then I have to ask, why did you ask? Why was it even a consideration? If you had wanted the thing, you probably should have just offered to buy it from your friend directly when you literally had the chance to do so because you were the consigner. That Probstein story was not discussed in this little section that we're talking about. He's talking about this other scenario, which I'll get into here in a moment. I'm going to back up a couple of seconds here and we're going to hit play.
But then this last episode, it seems like you said, let me clarify, very clear, very black and white, shill bidding is not okay, whether it's offensive or defensive, if you're bidding on your own items.
My comments were mixed together with Patrick's. Patrick and I had no rehearsal. We just, just turned on the microphone and started talking. And so when I was talking about defensive shill bidding, now in hindsight, a poor choice of terms, he has a different definition of even what that is. I'm talking about situations. In fact, the only situation I referenced was one when an item was mislisted. It was mislisted, and it was at a stage in the auction where it could not be withdrawn, and it was the only time in my whole life I've been tempted to put in a bid and say I want that back. Of course, I didn't do that for obvious reasons. Here's the catch, is that all shill bidding is wrong. But is all self-bidding wrong?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we've introduced a new one. All shill bidding is wrong. And of course, we're quibbling about the definition of shill bidding, which we'll continue to get into. But is all self-bidding wrong? We're asking the question. We're going to get back to that. But I want you to remember, first, we had defensive shill bidding, which now is apparently a bad phrase. I agree, but, thank you for figuring that out at this stage. But also, now, is all self-bidding wrong? Question mark. I just want to put the question out there. Is all self-bidding wrong? Now you can see why I'm getting a little bit of entertainment value out of this. Again, we're not really treading new ground. We're just coming up with another phrasing, yet another one. Now we're in the self-bidding era. We're in a new one here. But it's kind of an interesting thing. It's kind of an interesting way the mind can twist and work all these different angles. It is kind of fun to watch in real time. Okay, I'm going to back up again here a couple seconds. Let's continue from this spot. But again, I want you to think about, is all self-bidding wrong? Let's continue.
I didn't do that for obvious reasons. Here's the catch, is that all shill bidding is wrong. But is all self-bidding wrong? Is all self-bidding illegal? And the answer to that, Geoff, is no. There are auctions that permit that. In fact, the most prestigious auction houses in the world in live auctions allow for self-bidding or interested party bidding. It's usually disclosed. And that's the environment I grew up in. Okay. Now, what happened? What's different now? The nuance? eBay. When eBay came in, it was completely forbidden. In fact, the nightmare scenario that Teapot, your buddy, your associate, mentioned that Geoff Wilson would somehow mistakenly bid on his own items. The eBay policy applies to Teapot bidding on your items. And it's defined as shill bidding because he's your associate, because he works for you. Okay. That's not shill bidding. But eBay's in the
Okay, I'm going to pause here. I want to remind you of one thing. At the beginning of this little section, he was talking about all these prestigious houses which allow you to self-bid or interested parties to bid and all that, and it's included in presumably the terms and conditions. That's the era he came up in. He specifically cited that. And in the last video, we talked about in the podcast episode, I talked about the 3 distinct phases. And the phase we're in right now, for the most part, outside of this that he just created by doing this discussion with Geoff Wilson, the reality is we're in the section of it where now we're getting some people to take a closer look at some of these auction terms and conditions. And I specifically read you one about house bids, and that's one thing that not everybody necessarily knows about. Like if we did a legitimate polling of a lot of these auction houses, even people who use them regularly, there are a number of them who may not actually fully understand the implications or the verbiage inside of the terms and conditions, because most people don't read terms and conditions in software or in a platform. Like, let's be real, most people aren't doing that. If you did, then you're going in with your eyes wide open. Well, then great, that's fantastic. But the thing is, he's citing this as kind of like, well, in these auction houses, it's okay, so you can do it, so it's not illegal. That's his point that he's trying to get across, which, by the way, may be true for certain jurisdictions in certain instances, because it is written in the terms and conditions and you're agreeing to the terms and conditions. But now he's kind of turning it over on eBay and he's going, well, but for eBay says it's wrong. And he's saying, well, that's not shill bidding. Well, my counter to you, here's my pushback. You just said a moment ago, you're citing these other auction houses which are saying it's okay on their terms and conditions. Well, on eBay's terms and conditions, they're saying it's not okay. So if the auction house gets to decide if it's okay or it's not okay based on the terms and conditions, then that means if you want to operate on eBay's platform, it's not okay. We can't say that the terms and conditions absolve you in one avenue, but then the other auction house, which says in the terms and conditions, it's not okay. Well, then according to them, it's not okay. They have the right to have a stricter definition. They have the right to enforce it in a different way. They have the right to do all those things. You just said that an auction house has the right to do that mere seconds ago, but now eBay can't do that? No, eBay can have whatever definition it wants because the people using the eBay platform are agreeing to those terms and conditions too. It's the same thing. We can't say it's okay in one instance and say it's not okay in the other. You can't pick and choose that way. If we're going to use the auction house rules as our standard of whether it's okay or not, then fine. In your other auction house, your mysterious auction house you're talking about here, then apparently according to them it's okay. Well, according to eBay, it's not. And if we're going to go by the rules of the land, if you want to operate in eBay land, then you have to follow their rules. Whether they can enforce it or not is a different conversation entirely. That's a completely different discussion. And whether they do a good enough job enforcing it, we can have that discussion separately as well. No problem. But eBay's rules then are saying that it's not okay. So guess what? It's not okay if you're operating in eBay land. Okay, let me back up again here.
Grew up in. Okay, now what happened? What's different now? The nuance? eBay. When eBay came in, it was completely forbidden. In fact, the nightmare scenario that Teapot, your buddy, your associate, mentioned that Geoff Wilson would somehow mistakenly bid on his own items. The eBay policy applies to Teapot bidding on your items. And it's defined as shill bidding because he's your associate, because he works for you. Okay, that's not shill bidding. But eBay's and in the online world, it's, and again, eBay admits that there's a lot of shill bidding out there. My point was, there's also a lot of bidding on the interest of the owner of the item below the reserve. It's all on the behalf of the owner of the item, and it's done frequently, and it's accepted. It's done by the auction house. Okay, so that's self-bidding of a sort. It's defensive bidding of a sort. It's getting it up to the reserve. Okay, in my case, I was talking about 20%. It ticked me off. Still didn't bid, and then people say, "Well, you're worried about the car." No, if something is a refractor and they erroneously list it as a base card, well, of course it's going to go ridiculously cheap. Well, you're in the market mover business. You know, there's Card Ladder, there's the Beckett price guide stuff. All legitimate price guides that want to track what's really going on have to weed out extreme outliers on the high side as well on the low side. You know, it's not a true comp if it's a refractor and you don't list it as so. And that's really all I was talking about on the defensive. That made me mad, and yet I thought I got to take my lumps. But if it gets lumped into market movers, let's say, you know, it's a distortion. It's not a true comp, and you don't have to be you just have to check it out. So what is the solution? The solution is it's not case by case, because that's cost prohibitive. Even back in the old day, we did that. The patterns can be established. Patrick even.
Okay, so I'm gonna get into the whole patterns thing that we're gonna get into, but there was something that I didn't actually catch in my initial listen through that I just heard there, and I'm kind of flattered. I don't know if this is the case, but he did briefly, for a brief shining moment, he kind of was trying to kind of counteract somebody who would say that getting obsessed about the percentages. Well, as far as I know, I'm the only one who did that. For the episode, the standalone episode, where I was like, oh, now we're talking percentages and we're doing all that. I literally did that in that episode. As far as I'm aware, I think I'm the only one who specifically keyed in on that. So listen, if I was specifically listened to, now I'm doubly flattered. Now I'm very excited. Maybe this will be a lot of fun for some other people listening. But anyway, okay. So real quick, I want to get into what he just said. I already told you a moment ago that if we're operating in eBay sphere, then we're using their terms and conditions. So if we're agreeing to use their platform, then whatever their rules are, that's going to be the rules. So if according to them it's shill bidding, guess what? According to that jurisdiction in that particular thing, you're using their platform, it's shill bidding. Because at the same time, you're citing these other places where it's okay. And then you cited the house bids. And if you're saying for that specific instance, it's okay. Okay, that's fine. But then you talk about that scenario where, oh, well, you know, if the auction house or whoever listed it incorrectly, and as a result of that, it goes for way less than it should have, and you're upset about it, which, to be clear, is completely justifiable. If you consign something with an auction house or with a consignor, and they list your stuff incorrectly, they list something that's a refractor as not a refractor, and as a result of it, you lose out on a whole bunch of money, that really sucks. To be 100% agreed. That totally sucks. But it is not the problem of the bidders. That is a problem between you and the consignor, or you and the auction house. You need to be looking to the consignor, or you need to be looking to the auction house to be made whole. Because the reality is they were negligent in listing it incorrectly or taking a bad picture or whatever it was. Your issue is with the consignor. Your issue is with them not doing their job properly. So then if something needs to happen with that, then you need to deal with them. That is on you to go and try to be made whole by these people. And if they're good business people and they want your future business, then they should try to make you whole or give you some kind of an apology or something for screwing it up and costing you money. Because in that situation, it's costing you money. Now about the comp thing, I don't care. Because at the very same conversation that you're talking about, oh, well, that's, you know, an erroneous comp. It's like, totally agree with you. But here's the thing. You're talking about these platforms, and you're talking about all that, and you also bragged about how you guys vetted and how you used data and you found outliers and you ignored outliers. He talked about that in a previous podcast episode. He did talk about that. So in other words, this erroneous comp would be completely dismissed out of hand because it's a refractor that was listed as a base card. Therefore, that comp, irrelevant. So then it's the job of the one doing that, the market movers or the Card Ladder or whatever, or Beckett back in the day, they would go, oh yeah, that comp makes no sense because that is totally a refractor that was listed as a base card. Therefore, it sold for way less than it should have. That is out of whack with all the rest of the sales. Scrap it off of that list. So in reality, it doesn't affect the comp if they're doing their job. So why do I care? The only part of it that I agree with you is that it sucks for the consignor who got screwed over because the consignment company didn't do their job properly. On that, I agree. But then you take it up with the consignment company or you take it up with the auction house. That is where you need to be made whole. It is not on the bidding. So defensive shill bidding to protect your situation, your investment, because they screwed up and did the listing wrong and you couldn't pull it down. Congratulations. I don't care. So I don't agree with any part of that. A lot of words. I congratulate you on the sheer number of words you were able to throw out there. My answer is I don't care. Deal with the auction house. Deal with the consignor. You deal with them. And as far as the comp, don't worry about it. It's an outlier. Throw it in the garbage can. There you go. I've solved both of your problems. What else you got?
Alluded to that some of these auction houses know that certain individuals are only bidding on other certain individuals' items. Okay, that's shill bidding. And what I really hate are the conspiracies and the reneging and the gaming of the system. I want a fair set for everybody.
Pause. Okay. What I'm really worried about is the reneging. Okay. I already talked about this in the previous video, but I'm going to mention it really quickly before I hit play again. The reneging doesn't matter anymore. It's part of the equation, but again, this is where Beckett is focusing on all these little minutia and all concerned about all these little things. I get you. I agree with you. Like, if you're selling something and somebody's bidding it up and then they don't pay for it, that sucks. But here's the thing. You can totally win something and quote unquote pay for it, and it doesn't mean anything. Because if you won your own item through a third party or whatever the case may be, because this is the conspiracy part, that's the other party super worried about, fine. But the reality is this, then you're effectively paying yourself, and really the only punishment is the seller's fee. It's a relatively cheap way to get out of this problem. So you can totally pay for it. And by the way, then I guess it's a valid comp, right? The sale happened, the money changed hands, at least as far as the system is concerned, right? So that means the valid comp, right? So you can still accomplish what you're trying to accomplish and then put the card away for a little while or sell it on a different platform or whatever the case may be. The point is we're back to intent because I can't read your mind. I have no idea what your intent is. But in this case, you paid for it, so I guess it's good, question mark. So it's irrelevant. The point is, worrying about the reneging, I get it, but it's basically smokescreen. It's a bunch of extra noise to completely confuse the issue. I don't care. I'm back to what I said a moment ago. I don't care. You're throwing in complexities where they're not required. It's actually really simple. Don't bid on your own stuff. So no, it is simple. And he's going to try to fight against that in a minute. So it's coming. I'm just letting you know in advance it's coming. He's going to keep trying to fight against it and keep trying to harp on intention and worrying about that so much. But it's like, no, the answer is don't bid on your own stuff. If you follow that consistently, you will not go wrong. It is actually incredibly simple. And the rest of this is just noise. Man has to have his time to do some noise. So let's give it to him. We'll back up a couple seconds here and we'll continue.
And what I really hate are the conspiracies and the reneging and the gaming of the system. I want
damn those aliens.
A fair set for everybody.
It feels like if the auction houses put more resources and effort behind identifying those types of suspicious patterns. And in your episode, you use the example of, an account where, a lot of bidding activity, whenever this person lists an item, there's always a lot of bidding activity from this other account, right? It seems to me like the auction houses could put forth the effort and the resources to identify a lot more of that and take proactive action. I don't get the impression that they really do. Why don't you think the auction houses don't take more of a proactive approach about trying to eliminate shill bidding in every form that they can possibly detect it?
Number one, it's revenue negative to them, on the high end. Okay, that's why I was trying to make a distinction on the low end, on the defensive end. We're not really talking about that. What's in their best interest is new world record prices. So number one, it's revenue negative to them. Number two, nothing will really happen unless there's a consortium of these auction houses who, for the good of the industry, get Price Waterhouse or some other accounting firm to say, we want you to look at this data and find the patterns more than just in the one auction house. That's where it'll really be. And then my last point is, who do you think was the hobby's original shill policeman?
I mean, to a degree, probably Beckett Price Guide, right? Because you guys had to weed out.
Who else? We had a 99% market share.
Right.
No one was griping about the pricing back in the 80s, the 90s, because we were vetting those things, because we were giving weight and other kinds of market manipulation. Okay. Now I've been retired. I've been doing pricing since 96. And so I don't want to give me all the credit or all the blame, but also that's right when eBay came in. When eBay came in, the role of the Beckett Price Guide subtly changed and then drastically changed. And eBay is a shill bidder's paradise. I mean, it's just too easy.
All right. I'm going to pause here because there's some gold right here. This is where we finally get into the meat and potatoes, and now we get into the exciting stuff. This is where I'm having some fun now. All right, so now, Beckett was the original cop, the original police officer, and for the remainder of this video, I'm going to call him the sheriff. Jimbo was the sheriff. He was there watching the streets, keeping us safe. So I just, as he was describing this, let me quickly, as I'm explaining this point, let me just put something on the screen. So I'm thinking about police officers, and I'm thinking about, the integrity of the police in certain instances, not in all cases, certainly not, absolutely not. But I'm just thinking about, like, is there an analogy of a type of police, the sheriff? The sheriff is out there doing his thing. But anyway, I just thought, this was a wonderful little section. I didn't want to miss it because it was too good. Now, a couple of quick notes. Going back to this tab here. Okay, a couple quick notes. So fine, you want to give yourself credit for being the sheriff. Wonderful. He also said that nobody ever complained about the. I guarantee you can. Dealers totally complain about the prices. And by the way, going into the '90s, I will speak from personal experience. There were plenty of people who looked at it like, where the hell did they come up with this ridiculous price? Who the hell buys it or sells it at that price? No, there's plenty of people who disagreed with it. The vetting thing, we just talked about that a little earlier. You know, they're taking outliers out of it. They're trying to use data with it. They had different people that went around and tried to get the pricing data. And obviously some people are going to lie about it. So their job is to try to ferret that out. That's perfectly fine. That's where kind of the, little police officer stuff comes in from the sheriff. They're vetting these sales to make sure that we're getting the real information, the real stuff. By the way, some of those Beckett prices were totally out to lunch. Like, let's be real. But that's okay because, like, there's just so many numbers. There's no way that you're going to be able to completely canvas the world. What eBay did is it allowed a lot more marketplace to be available. It allowed a lot more people into the possibility of being able to purchase certain items. So it increased the possibility of certain markets. And it also made it clear that some items are simply more available than we initially let on. Some stuff that was rare, when eBay suddenly showed up and really became prominent, suddenly it's like, oh, it's not as rare as we thought. So the prices actually started to come down on those things. Other things, it became clear, oh, actually, that is super rare. So the prices of those things started to go up. So it totally changed the game on a lot of different things. It's a lot of data points. But here, at the very end of this piece segment here, he specifically says that it's a shill bidder's paradise, which I don't fundamentally disagree. I understand where he's coming from on this, but not but 5 seconds ago, he said that their auction houses, which we already know this is true, but let's just quickly go back to this thought, not mere moments ago. He was talking about the auction houses who, in their terms and conditions, have the ability to self-bid. So it's in the terms and conditions. Not only is it possible, but it's written in there that you can do it. So wouldn't that be a shill bidder's paradise? Because it's literally in the terms and conditions you can do it. So why not? I'm going back to what I said earlier about eBay's enforcement. eBay's enforcement, we all agree, is not great. But the truth is, at least they have a policy saying, don't do that. We don't want you to do that. But at the same time, we may not be able to catch you. But then their shill bidder's paradise versus the auction house that literally has it written into their terms and conditions that you can do it. That's less of a shill bidder's paradise. There's a lot of things that I can pick on Geoff for, and there's a lot of things I can make fun of him for in this stuff. But he spends a lot of time doing this when the follow-up or the next words that you could have said were what I just said. A moment ago, you said the terms and conditions of some of these auction houses allow you to self-bid. Instead of defensive shill bidding, it's now self-bid. So instead of self-bidding, you can do that in the terms and conditions. But that's less of a shill bidder's paradise than eBay, where at least in the terms and conditions, they're trying to tell you not to do it. And you just said a moment ago, they're too strict. You said a moment ago that it's a poor teapot in this hypothetical thing. He's catching strays apparently again. So in poor teapot in this hypothetical situation, and we're going to get to that more in a moment, he can't bid on these cards that he so wants for his PC because those draconian eBay people who apparently can't catch a cold when it comes to shill bidding most of the time, they prevent him from being able to because it's shill bidding and it's bad. But there's auction houses that said self-bidding is okay. That's not a shill bidder's paradise, but eBay is. I'm having some fun with this. I'm being a little bit dramatic about it. But do you get where I'm sitting there like, how the gymnastics that are required for you to say these things one after the other? And I'm just sitting there going like, instead of nodding, Geoff, maybe you should try listening to what the man is saying. Hear the words that are coming out of his mouth and go, wait a minute, that sounds ridiculous. You said something a second ago that completely contradicts what you just said a second ago. So eBay is a shill bidder's paradise, but the auction houses that say self-bidding is okay is cool. Yes, nod your head. Nod. You'll still get an invite to the table at the hobby dinner. You'll be fine. Just keep nodding. Keep nodding. You'll be cool. To be clear, I don't really care. But I'm just pointing out it's silly. Let me back up here, and we'll continue from here.
We were giving weight and other kinds of market manipulation. Okay. Now I've been retired. I've been doing pricing since '96, and so I don't want to give me all the credit or all the blame, but also that's right when eBay came in. When eBay came in, the role of the Beckett Price Guide subtly changed and then drastically changed. And eBay is a shill bidder.
It's a very nice way of saying the Beckett Price Guide became virtually irrelevant and completely pointless, and it happened fast, super fast. Because those numbers meant absolutely nothing. The good news is, to this very day, they continue to mean nothing. But eBay is the shill bidder's paradise. So let's remember that. It's an important point.
eBay is a shill bidder's paradise. I mean, it's just too easy to set up with accounts. eBay knows it's happening. I think they're trying to police it. But like I say, there needs to be a consortium. If enough people say we don't want the, even collectors, even flippers, they don't really want to rate it in. They want to know how the game is played, and they want to get in on it. It's mainly possible in a bull market, and that's what we've had.
eBay has definitely been a problem on eBay. It continues to be a problem on eBay. Now, eBay has made some proactive measures to their credit to try to make some of this better. They've done things now like requiring with certain auctions, requiring that people put in payment methods and have a credit card associated, so that when the auction ends, the card can automatically be charged. If you're going to put in a bid on a best offer, if you're going to put in an offer on a situation where someone's got a fixed price and they're accepting offers, eBay will often require payment information to be entered prior to putting in the offer to try to avoid situations where comps occur because a sale occurs, but then it's never paid for. A classic shill bidding scenario like you're describing. They've made progress, but it's still a challenge that they deal with.
Pause. There's plenty of shill bidding scenarios that play out where the person pays, quote unquote pays. They're paying themselves. I just said a moment ago, the whole not paying thing is not really required for that. Yes, you can have the not paying thing, the reneging thing, which Beckett was obsessing over. That is totally true, 100%. But remember, he's talking about smart criminals. He's talked about this a couple times now. He'll talk about it again. The smart criminals clearly should just pay for the item. That way the comp exists. So you see, it was paid for, and it'll appear on TerraPeak. It'll appear on all these other, because the payment method went through, the money went there, and all they're out is the seller's fees. It's a pretty easy way to still get it through, but they didn't renege. They paid it. So there you go. I guess they're the smart ones. So we'll move on here but I want to just point out that we obsess about this idea about the not paying, which I get, and I'm in agreement with, but I'm saying that's not the only way to skin a cat here. There's multiple ways, but we're going to keep fixating on this one.
Situations where comps occur because a sale occurs, but then it's never paid for. A classic shill bidding scenario like you're describing. They've made progress, but it's still a challenge that they deal with.
The other nuance of shill bidding is that on the low end, you're hoping to win, and that's, like I said, it's a different kind of shill bidding. If it's an item that you're related to, you're wanting to win. On the higher end, the sophisticated shill bidder doesn't want to win. He wants to come in second, or she, whoever it would be, they want to come in second. And there's some skill that I don't have and don't want to have, but I'd like to know how they can do it, how they can come in second. Then they don't have to renege, but they've gotten to me, that's the idiot, the guy that got raised up unreasonably, and I feel sorry for him. But that's the shill skill, is the ability to come in second and not have to renege, that how just high enough to go with allowing the person. And that's still pattern that's traceable, Geoff. That's still pattern that's traceable. You show me that somebody's coming in second every time. Well, I mean, it's already been, it's a done deal, but that's kind of what was happening with Mastro. The auction house itself knew what the max bids were. And so
all right, let me pause here. So remember, he's talking about a couple different things. So this is kind of the key to this whole setup in the scenario here, is that we're just going to throw a bunch of examples. We're going to go from this section to that section to that section to this section, and our intrepid host will do this a lot, just so we're all on the same page here. Okay, so real quick, he's making some points here, but the problem is they're not as good as they sound on paper. And part of the reason for that is really simple. The reality is that he's still specifying between the low end and the high end. It's like on the low end, they want to win. The idea here being the defensive, because it's like, oh, I want to buy it back because, it's going to go for too little money. Again, we're back to that example of the bad listing or whatever the case may be. Or if it's not a bad listing though, and I'm glad you're sitting down, may I throw out a theory? If the auction goes for a lower amount than you think it does, and the listing wasn't bad, the images weren't bad, and you didn't set it to end at 3 a.m, maybe the market is lower on it than you thought, and you actually weren't going to get the amount that you thought you were going to get, and you're basically defensively shill bidding to prevent yourself from taking a bat that you're actually supposed to take, because that's where the market actually is. Sometimes that happens. I know it's a scandalous thought. I'm glad you're sitting down. It's a scandalous thought. But if there isn't the malpractice of a consignor or whoever listing it incorrectly, if it sells for not enough, then maybe the circumstances weren't right. Your timing was bad, or whatever the case may be. That sucks, again, but that's the will of the marketplace at the time. You're trying to circumvent that. So you're saying because it's on the low end, well, you're just trying to you're trying to win it, so you prevent it from going too low. Versus the high end, well, it's like, well, you're trying to get in second place, which fine, I agree with that concept. But the reality is, in the same conversation where he's talking about Mastro, where in Mastro the fix was in because they knew what the number was to get you to the magic number right before. Now he's incorporating the shill skill. Well, the thing is, if they don't have the data, then they're just guessing. And here's a funny thing. Remember about the intent thing? And we're going to get back to the intent thing again in a moment. I promise we're going to get there. What if, and by the way, this has happened to me. What if you're trying to win a certain specific type of card? And there's multiple copies. It's not just a one of one or something. It's something that's, limited, but it's still available. And from time to time, they'll come up. And what if you wind up ending up in second place? They're different sellers, by the way, not same seller. It's a different seller, but you keep trying to win it. The problem is you can't seem to quite figure out what the number is. That other person just is willing to go a little bit further than you. And as time goes on, you try to bid more. By the way, this literally happened to me. And the price just kept going up and up and up. And I kept trying to win the damn thing. Finally, I was able to find a seller that was willing to sell it to me. And by the way, I paid more money for it than anyone has ever paid for it. I literally have the card right there. You can't see it, obviously. I'm in a very tiny portion of the screen now. But literally, I have it on my little display there. That's a card that I paid more money for. The last one that sold for maybe a quarter of what this one sold for. The patch, it's a patch card that I have. The patch that I have is a much nicer one than the one that sold for. But the reality is no one has ever paid as much money for that specific card, and the print run I think is 12. I was the underbidder on 4 of them. I just kept falling short. I was trying to win the stupid thing, and I kept increasing my bids each time to try to get it, and I kept falling short. But according to the sheriffs, if he runs the data, it's like, oh, you must be shill bidding that card because you're in second place. I was in second place 4 different times for the stupid card before I finally won the damn thing. That was bad luck because I have no idea how much to bid. I didn't know what the appropriate amount was because I don't know who my opponent is. So I'm sitting there like, I have no idea how much money you got. I have no idea how much money you're willing to pay. I'm just guessing. But here's the good news. I got good news. Don't worry, Sheriff. I was intending to win, and I was trying to win so that I could intend to pay. Because apparently that's the catch-all. As long as I'm intending to pay, everything's good, everything's hunky-dory, no matter what happens. So I was trying to win, and eventually I did win, and I paid the damn money, and I have the card. So good. My intentions are good. We're solid. The point is, yes, that bidding pattern definitely helps. But again, if you don't have inside information, then the shill skill is basically luck. You're guessing. You're coming up with a number, and if you just happen to keep coming up in second, hey, if they ever catch you, just tell the sheriff that you were intending to win it and you were intending to pay. All is forgiven. All is forgiven. Intention is everything. Or so it seems.
You could bid it up to the person's max bid. And again, Bill I'll get in trouble for this too. Bill Mastro was a friend of mine too, but he's served his time. But that's what he was doing. That's horrible that he used that inside information. I don't think shill bidders are doing it that way, but somehow they're knowing what they can go up to.
They're magical.
I want that. I want people to be punished. I'm not. I'm like I said. I'm certainly not soft on shill bidders. I'm just trying to get a definition of what shill bidding really is. And people say, everybody knows what shill bidding is. By eBay's definition, if Teapot bids on your item, he's a shill bidder. That's not right. That's not right.
It's perfectly fine. We just talked about this a second ago. Per the eBay auction house, they're setting the rules of the land. So if Teapot is a shill bidder, if he bids on Geoff's auctions per eBay, well, then that's fine. Those are the laws of the land. Adhere to the laws of the land. You don't like it? Go to the other auction house that says self-bidding is okay, that says third interested parties can bid. There are auction houses that will allow it in the terms and conditions. So just follow the terms and conditions. So it would seem. That seems like a simple solution to this. Or thou shalt not bid on one's own shed. Really easy. It's succinct and to the point. We keep trying to say no, it's simple. It is a lot simpler than you want to make it to be. I promise you it is. And it's a really simple thing. Just follow it and you'll be fine.
What shill bidding really is. And people say, everybody knows what shill bidding is. By eBay's definition, if Teapot bids on your item, he's a shill bidder. That's not right. That's not right. Now, and that doesn't matter whether he got a great deal on it or whether he paid above market. For him to be prohibited is not right.
And during your episode, you talked about the importance of intent and premeditation. And so when you say that Teapot bidding on my item is not shill bidding, I assume you're saying that from the standpoint of if Teapot had the intention to pay for the item, buy the item, add the item to his personal collection, he really wants that item and he's competing in a fair marketplace against others who do. There's the flip side where you have associates or employees or friends who may be asked to bid an item up just simply to help achieve a higher price for the friends, in which case there you have the premeditation, you have the intention that truly does meet the definition of that being a very problematic shill bidding situation.
Yeah. And
Before the sheriff responds, I will point out that in both those scenarios, how do you know which is which? Unless you have correspondence indicating that you're being asked to bid for this as one of the employees or whatever, unless you have that, well, the sheriff already told us. The very sheriff in this very video, he told us multiple times, and also the previous videos, if you intend to bid and you intend to pay, then everything's cool, man. So word to the wise, no matter what happens, if you get caught, just say I intended to pay. You're out. Get out of jail free card. The sheriff has spoken. Now you see why it's silly that we're focusing on the intent thing. How am I supposed to judge intent? I can't. I can't get in your head. But now I know it's a get out of jail free card. That sounds swell. Awesome. Good to hear. I'm going to back up a couple of seconds. But do you see my point? Like, this is a silly hill to die on. Because in the same vein, you cannot judge this. You cannot determine it. And you're trying to make this distinction in a thing that we cannot measure. We have no way of knowing if you intended. What was your intention? I don't know. I can ask you, but unless I have evidence that specifically state, unless you were dumb enough to specifically tell me, yeah, I have no intention of winning this. Yeah, I have no intention of paying for this, but I'm bidding on it because I want it to go higher. Unless you specifically state that, just tell them you always intended to win. Tell them you were trying to your best, and tell them that you would have totally paid for it if you had won. You're good to go, man. You're free. Next.
The premeditation, you have the intention, that truly does meet the definition of that being a very problematic shill bidding situation.
Yeah. And I had critics saying, hey, intent doesn't matter. You're either a shill bidder or you're not. That's exactly the conversation I wanted to get into. I'm not throwing Teapot under the bus. You know, if it's an Andre Drummond card, how is it fair that he can't even bid on it because you may not even be the owner. You may be a consigner through Cards.
This is a tragedy.
You know, it's the criminals have a repetitive behavior pattern. Again, I was the original shill policeman. The same people keep doing these kinds of manipulative activities. Teapot, if he's always bidding on your auctions, always getting a good deal, or always paying above market. But like I said, you just have to have some common sense. But under eBay's rules, I don't think he's allowed to bid on your item. And that's not right. But that's a scare tactic. If he was arrested, he'd say, you know, the intent would be something he could defend himself and defend himself well. I give him the benefit of the doubt, just like I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt until they prove me wrong.
And just to be clear, for anybody out there, I don't want anyone misinterpreting this. Teapot has not bid on any of my items. He never has, and I don't want him to. He won't. I've told him not to because I don't want any type of association with that, right or wrong. I don't want any type of story to come out or anything. So just to be clear, we're talking here about a completely hypothetical situation, not something that actually ever happens. Now, what?
Good save, Geoff. Good save. That was nice. That was nice. But hypothetically, if it did happen, he intended to pay for it. That's important. Make sure you include that part in there. Include that part in this. The sheriff is watching you. The sheriff is watching you. He's looking at your body language. That was a lot of hand gestures. And look, I'm a hand talker. I get this. I respect it. But just include that part. The intent was to pay for it. Hypothetically, if it happened.
Right or wrong. I don't want any type of story to come out or anything. So just to be clear, we're talking here about a completely hypothetical situation, not something that actually ever happens. Now,
which you would try to protect him if you got an Andre Drummond card coming up that he wanted. Okay, I mean, again, I'm not trying to twist this, but if the consignor came to you and said, Geoff, I want you to put these items up for me, and one of them is an Andre Drummond, he said, I've got a guy, he's a great employee, great friend, and he's Andre, and can I just sell it to him? And he says, no, I want to put it on open auction. Now you have a dilemma. Now you've got to say, Teapot, you can't even bid on this. That's not right. And I'm saying the intent and the circumstances, but again, those aren't the criminals. The criminals have a repetitive behavior, and I want to put them behind bars or kick them out of the hobby or whatever.
How big of a problem do you think it is in the hobby? I know it's been going on for a long time. Is it a bigger problem today than it was, or is this just,
way bigger
part of
today?
Okay.
It's eBay. It's not just eBay. PWCC's, it was an existential threat to them because they were, I think, accused of encouraging shill bidding and blatantly looking the other way. I'm not sure that's true, but they left eBay. Now, Rick Probstein was accused of the same things. I've had a number of conversations with him. I don't think he was doing that. I think he was doing as much as he can in every conversation with him. If you're not the owner, if you're not the consignor, you're not an interested party in any way, you can bid on stuff that's not your own or that you're not an interested party. But he can tell because he knows who the consignor is and he knows who wins. And I think I think he's a straight shooter. Now, again, I could be wrong there, but I don't think his desire to set up Snipe is leaving eBay in bad standing.
So I think there's a couple of things I could have some fun with. I did mention this was a damn long video, so I'm trying to make sure I play a little bit more to get through more of it. A couple of things real quick. One of them is that leave Teapot alone. Leave hypothetical Teapot alone. Hasn't the man suffered enough as a result of this? He was catching strays already. Leave the guy be. Sheriff, did we have to use Teapot? Poor innocent, and the Andre Drummond cards. Leave them alone. All right, so that's one thing. Second thing, the whole concept. Again, he's still obsessing about the whole thing. He wants so badly for the damn intent thing to be a thing. It's not necessary. It really isn't. Part of the reason that I kept it so simple is because then it gives you a very straightforward path. You don't have to sit there and try to ferret out all these silly new. Here's the reality. Even his ridiculous scenario that he obsessed over, and this again, Teapot catching strays for no reason. Even in the silly scenario, the reality, like, here's the truth. In the same conversation that you're saying, you just said that eBay is a shill bidder's paradise. You know why it's shill bidder's paradise? Because people can make multiple accounts. They can do all these kinds of things. They're not really investigating as deeply as maybe you would like to do. They're not necessarily using that data the way that you would like them to use it in order to catch people. And, hey, the sheriff wants to catch people. He needs some evidence. So you're not necessarily doing all those things. So here's a really simple hypothetical, since we like hypotheticals so much. I'll give you a simple one. And I explained this on the live stream this past week. But what if you just got saved searches? What if you're poor innocent Teapot that got dragged into this mess by the sheriff, and you check your saved searches, you see a card, you're not even paying attention to who the seller is, you're just you go in, you place your bid, you place a snipe or whatever, and you win. Congratulations. You get the notification, you pay for it, boom, done. Oh, it turns out it was Cars HQ. Oh, crap. That's unfortunate, but at the end of the day, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to tell you. Who's investigating that? And if you need any more evidence to it, you have saved snipe, you have a saved search for Andre Drummond cards or whatever the case may be. If you're not really going out of your way, again, this is a situation where you found it through the save search feature that's available on eBay, and you bid on it as normal, and you purchased it as normal, and you paid it as normal. And hey, we already established that if you got the intention, you're a free man. Moving on. You got the ultimate defense. I intended to pay for it. And not only did I intend to pay for it, I paid for it. Well, there you go. Done. Now, the other part of it was the Rick Probstein thing, because he got name dropped in this one. Bad timing with Snipe having its issues. Hey, you know what's the best way of avoiding shill bidding? Have your platform not work. You can't shill bid a platform that isn't active, huh? See? 4D chess. Little do you guys know. But anyway, good timing with that one. Anyway, so here's the thing. He drops Probstein in there. Again, in this conversation, he doesn't specifically go into the story where he talked about it in the other podcast. The other podcast where he talked about, where he was asking Probstein about, well, can I bid on this? Well, you can sign it. And then he's doing this whole back and forth. Again, why are you even asking the question? Why is this even a thing? Also, again, he's focusing in on eBay and he's picking on eBay and all this. But again, it might be more prevalent today because of the sheer volume of auctions that are available on eBay. But we already had the conversation earlier in this very video talking about the auction houses that specifically allow self-bidding, that have house bids and all these other things. So it was literally written into the rules and conditions that you could basically, in effect, shill bid through various means, offensive, defensive, special teams, whatever we're calling it today, self-bid, whatever we're deciding to call it today. We can do all these things in the rules, in the terms and conditions, but today it's more prevalent. Through sheer numbers, probably, but it was more blatant back in the day because really nobody was paying attention to it, and it was already written in the rules that you could do it. So I would have a hard time accepting his premise outside of through the sheer numbers. Through the sheer numbers, I think we can agree that probably it becomes more obvious to do. But again, he keeps putting all at the feet of eBay. I wish they would enforce things better. But the reality is it's a very convenient way of glossing over the fact that we were already advocating and talking about these auction houses have much looser terms. And eBay seems to think shill bidding is more prevalent in terms of what they consider to be shill bidding. But we want to make the rules looser. We want people to get caught, but we also want to make the rules looser so they can do more things that fall into that gray zone. I'm not understanding how these two things connect. You're losing me, Sheriff. You're losing me, man. Moving on.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Everything that I've heard, including, by the way, going back a few years ago, I heard from an actual person connected at eBay who said that they had been when they, at the time that they obviously made the move they did with PWCC, they said that they had looked at other consigners' accounts, including Rick Probstein's account, Probstein123, and they did not see any noticeable pattern of shill bidding occurring. So they did definitely do some digging into it and felt okay with what was going on there. So yeah, I don't think that has anything to do with him leaving eBay or anything of that nature whatsoever. There are auction houses. You mentioned this earlier. There are auction houses where, as part of their terms and conditions, they actually reserve the right to place bids themselves on items in order to get them up to some type of predetermined but maybe undisclosed reserve price on an item. And it's interesting. I think one of the things this whole conversation the last few weeks has brought to light, which I didn't know, was how different the terms and conditions of different auction houses are. They're quite different. And what it may be accepted at one auction house is not accepted at another. And people may be surprised by what's allowed at certain auction houses, including this scenario of them placing bids. What have you seen there?
Again, unfortunate choice of words, but it's when this is activity well below the reserve that the auction house, again, the most prestigious auction houses in the world do this, can bid on behalf of the consigner right up to the reserve. Okay, and that is an accepted practice. What are you going to say? They're not.
You could say it shouldn't be. You could argue with that understanding, that additional context. They go, hey, maybe I didn't fully realize that, but now I understand a little bit better. Maybe. Is that okay? Remember earlier he was asking if all self-bidding is wrong. Okay, listen, philosophically I'm willing to have this conversation with you, but I'm going to ask, it's accepted practice, but should it be? Let me pose that question. That's a question we can ask. That's a debate we can have. But what can you do? Like I just told you, you can question it. You can be like, wait a minute, is that appropriate? Does that seem right to you?
Auction houses in the world do this, can bid on behalf of the consigner right up to the reserve. Okay, and that is an accepted practice. What are you going to say? They're not. It's not illegal. They're saying they're going to do it. You're not going to not go to that auction house because of that. Again, it's below the reserve. But like I say, the more insidious kind.
If you knew that and you were still okay with it, then yes. But if you're like a lot of people who don't really read the terms and conditions, didn't actually realize that the fix was in and the house could bid against you like that, and you could be bidding against air, maybe you wouldn't do business with them. So I disagree with your premise. I'm pushing back. I'm not an odd guy. Hold on. Wait. Maybe you wouldn't do business with them. Maybe not.
What are you going to say? They're not. It's not illegal. They're saying they're going to do it. You're not going to not go to that auction house because of that. Again, it's below the reserve. But like I say, the more insidious kind of bidding activity that happens more so in sports cards, where there's a lot of SKUs, but there's a lot of replication. I mean, somebody could hold 10 copies. You're not going to have 10 copies of a painting as much as you could have 10 copies of a certain Shohei Ohtani or Michael Jordan, Fleer rookie card, where you're trying to run up the market. That is maybe not unique to collectibles, but it's particularly susceptible to collectibles. And that's what's going on the high end. Like I say, that's premeditated. It's a scheme. It's a conspiracy. And if it gets bad enough, people talk about regulating the industry. Well, that would be something that could get somebody pretty upset. If they're doubling the price, supporting the price, I wasn't talking about that at all. I'm talking about something that was mislisted and that I felt tempted to shill bid, which would be a shill bid according to that definition if I bid on my own stuff, and I didn't do it. Okay, so I took my lumps. If there'd been a reserve, the auction company could have bid it up to the reserve, but there wasn't a reserve on that one.
Let us all take a moment of silence for your sacrifice. During this moment of silent reflection, I'm wishing that I had kept a second of these IPAs in the refrigerator. Alas, I'm out, but we move on.
So there's a lot of things in hindsight you can avail yourself of. But like you said, when you get down into reading the fine print, you see this is a little bit more complicated than just don't bid on your own stuff. Don't bid on your friend's stuff. Is that okay? Yes, you can bid on your friend's stuff. In fact, you can buy your friend's stuff, but you can't have a prearranged deal. Hey, I'm going to buy it and I'm going to sell it back to you. That is shill bidding. That's just not right. Now, that's an obvious workaround. I could have done that. I've got lots of friends in the hobby, but I would never do that. That's a conspiracy. Again, we just want a level playing field. This is a hobby.
No, literally we don't. I said in the last video, no, we don't want a level playing field. We're saying we want a level playing. Well, look, from an intention standpoint, our intention is to have a level playing field, but then we're also going to kind of argue different little side cases and edge scenarios where the playing field isn't completely level, it's level-ish, it's level adjacent. Could be level adjacent. That'd be good. That's a good one. No, I disagree. I go in contrast to Nod Guy here on this one as well. I'm sorry, I can't get there. Can't get there, Sheriff man. I'm sorry. We might have to defer to the deputy on this one. I'm just not feeling it. But hey, I like it. I like your attempt to get back to that. No, the intent. I really don't care. I understand what you're trying to get at. I understand how hard you're fighting for this. In my courtroom, the answer is no. We'll discuss intent after you're caught and you want to use it as a defense. And clearly, I can't read your mind, so I guess the intent is always to pay. So we'll never know for sure, which is a wonderful defense. But no, I disagree. Fundamentally, and from the beginning to middle to the end.
That's a conspiracy. It's, again, we just want a level playing field. This is a hobby that has gotten really big, and the dollars have gotten really big. And so the schemes have gotten more sophisticated. That's all I'm trying to point out. But the real concerns are the comps that are way above comps, unexpectedly above comps.
And on the high end of the sports card market.
No, it's not. Why is the concern ones that are way above? What about the concern for the ones that are maintaining comps? The rationale, the idea that it only matters if it's way above comps and setting new records or whatever, that's the only thing we should care. What about if the thing would have fallen below comps had you not put a hand on the scale and pushed it down? No, it's not just the new record prices and the way above comps. No, hard disagree. I'm going to go, hold on. I'm doing this. I'm going no. Nope. Disagree. Couldn't disagree more. But that is strictly my opinion.
Way above comps, unexpectedly above comps.
And on the high end of the sports card market, we've seen a lot of maybe unexpectedly high comps this year. It's been a year where you're seeing record price after record price. You're seeing a lot of what I would say are good quality cards, scarce cards, desirable scarce cards of a lot of the all-time great players have done huge things in the high-end market this year. Some of these cards, Jordan cards and Kobe cards and Brady cards and, on down the line, even back to vintage, maybe not quite as hot this year as some of this, kind of modern stuff. But even with vintage, we've seen, big upward swings in the market, record prices being set, and massive auction results. In the wake of, the whole controversy regarding Patrick Ryan bidding on one of his own items and all the conversation that's taken place, there's a number of people that have said the high end of the market and a lot of its gains this year are maybe more of a result of manipulation and shill bidding and, than actual reality. Do you think that could be the case? Or do you think that, no, that's taking things a little too far and the high end has just had a really good year?
Is that possibly what Jason Mashro was saying at Upper Deck when he was talking about prices getting way overheated? Again, I use the expression smart criminal in my episode, and people just castigated me for that too. But these are smart criminals. And so, Geoff, the scenario you've laid out, these are people that are knowledgeable hobbyists, criminals, but trying to take advantage of the passion of true collectors. And so they know, and I hope this is not a roadmap for criminals, but they know that the item that they can shill bid cannot be too scarce or too plentiful. The demand has to be great, and the desire has to be great, and they can't be too little or too many. And so whether they've figured out a way using software, algorithmically, but they have figured out which ones to go for. You can't do it with every card. And so, like I say, there's a pattern. It's predictable. If I were younger, and back in the day, we policed this stuff. Now I'm too retired, but somebody ought to do it because it's damaging the integrity of our industry, of our hobby.
Yeah, and it's difficult to police. I mean, even from like a comp perspective, from somebody who obviously owns a software product that reports comps and sales, will examine outlier sales. But at the end of the day, if the auction house says the item was paid, then it's going into our data, right? Now, we don't know who paid it. They don't disclose that. We don't know if it was a friend of, the person who put it up or the person's own proxy account and they ended up getting stuck with the card because they ended up being the top bid, but now they're going to go sell another copy based upon now that high price. We don't have visibility into that. So it's simply, was the item paid? Obviously, there's some extreme outlier examples where we can doubt the legitimacy of something, and we may make the call to exclude something if it looks just too suspicious. If there's something very strange in the bidding history, or the person who bought this item has never bought any high-end item before, et cetera. But the visibility into the data to help police is really limited by the auction houses. They don't put a lot of that stuff out there, so that you're often left guessing as the person who's trying to report on the sales.
Geoff, back in the day, before I retired, we had 18 price analysts, full-time, traveling all over the country on the weekends. They were in the office working hard during the week, but going to shows every weekend because they were first-hand, second-hand, third-hand, as close as we could to firsthand knowledge of what was going on out there, knowing the players, knowing who the buyers were, who the sellers were, being at not all the major shows, but pretty much all the major shows, card shops, all that stuff. So we really canvassed the market. That's prohibitively expensive now. And not only that, most of the activity is on eBay. And so I think the stability from back in the 90s was partly because of that. But that methodology would not be feasible now. It wouldn't be feasible for market movers, for card ladder, for anything. All you can do, you're right, you can check the outliers. And my point with the defensive thing again was saying you're not going to spend as much time on the low end as you are on the high end. On the low end, you're looking for, is this mislabeled, underdescribed, poorly marketed? And that happens a lot too. And if it's mislabeled enough, it's not even the right card.
So now we're back to the part where now we can figure out where these outliers are. So I thought a moment ago we needed to use some defensive shill bidding, or potentially needed to use some defensive shill bidding in order to prevent this horrific outlier that would ruin comps. And now we can look at it and go, wait a minute, that's mislabeled, and then just throw out the comp. We've come full circle on this. This is great. This is phenomenal. We've solved it all within the context of this conversation. I'm excited. I, for one, am thrilled that we are now in this place. This is why we're building the Content God mega church right now. This is exciting stuff right here. I am learning so much.
And that's happened. And so you'd obviously throw that out. But these new world record prices, it's all exciting. It gets headlines. It just needs to be legit.
You referenced the Upper Deck president who made some comments recently that raised a lot of eyebrows, where he said that he was concerned.
Is that not similar? I mean, I don't know that I'm saying that.
Right.
But
no, 100%.
I don't know if it is similar. He was talking about markets being overcooked in a variety of different categories. So maybe it is similar. Maybe it's dissimilar. But this is also a completely random third topic. So maybe ask Jason Mashra. Maybe ask him for clarification there. I don't really care. This is, yeah, I'm going to go with that. I don't know if the president of Upper Deck necessarily has market insights into specific auction houses or market data. I think he was speaking more holistically to a variety of different speculative markets, including sports cards, but also including other things. That was literally what was in the post. So where does that have to do with anything here? Look, I'm here for random tangents, like, far be it for me to judge, but whatever.
He shared concerns about where the market is now, and he shared concerns that we may be in too much of a speculative market, and that there could be what's working today with a lot of the buying and selling activity and the high prices of, he referenced the high price of cards and boxes. None of that may be sustainable in a market downturn. Right now, the market's hot. A lot of people are making money off of cards. People are willing to pay a lot for cards because the market's hot and it's working. It may not work if the market starts to slide backwards. Do you share his concern that the market as a whole may not be in a very healthy spot right now?
Can I equivocate? Apparently people think I do that all the time, but basically the market is hot, and the question is it too hot? And so yes, it's hot. It's legitimately hot, but some of the heat is putting some extra super hot sauce on top of what's already hot. And so I want to scrape off that top layer of people taking advantage of the system. And I think Jason is saying the same thing. It's not the product as it's produced. It's the layers that are stacked on top. The many intermediaries or people that are taking that box or that case, and a month later, a week later, whatever, it's doubled in price. I don't think he's talking about the original release. I don't think he's talking about sales to hobbyists. I think he's talking about the speculators that are taking things higher. And again, you want a dynamic hobby. That he's not. I don't think he would be trying. I mean, that's the excitement in the hobby, is that prices are dynamic. When we did the price guides, it wasn't as fast moving as it is now, but that's part of the excitement and thrill of the hobby. I just don't want cheaters. That's all. I just don't want cheaters.
All right, so I'm going to leave it at that. There is still another 18 minutes left of this conversation, but now the focus shifts over to predominantly market health. I do think they touch on some other stuff related to kind of maybe shill bidding. I think they intersperse it a little bit here and there, but I think we got into the meat and potatoes of this, and already this video is going to be long enough, so I'm good leaving it here. I will leave a link in the description to this so you can listen to it in its entirety. I've listened to about the 35-minute mark, give or take, so if you want to keep listening beyond this point, if I missed anything major, you're more than welcome to put it in the comments section. Feel free to put it in there. Look, I had some fun with this. The reality is snarky Carlos is what happens when it's later in the evening and he's had enough time where he's missed out on the opportunity to do it earlier in the day. And now, alas, I'm going to need to restock on my beer before the Friday live stream, so I'm going to do that. Regardless, though, I don't agree with a lot of the stuff he said. snarky or not, I don't agree with a lot of it. I think a lot of time was spent worrying about the intent again. I don't agree with that. I think a lot of the examples were given just don't really fly with me. But again, we can have a disagreement about that. I can poke some fun. And now the sheriff nickname, honestly, is going to be very fun for me. And I will reference it now. Now I can't unsee it. And again, I'm looking forward to the monologue where King Kong can't have anything on him. And again, if you know the movie reference, you know. But all I'll say is this. This was highly entertaining for me, unintentionally, I think. But to be clear, I don't think this was a particularly well-made argument. It meandered at various times. There were a lot of little pauses that created, like, you're trying to come up with an answer. And I understand that. But I do feel, I'm serious when I said it earlier. I do think at this point, it seems that whatever your intentions were, because again, we can't judge intentions, that's the overwhelming theme of the past couple of videos. Regardless of what your intentions were or what you think they were, it's not landing the way that you want it to. And at a certain point, and towards the tail end of this, I'm skipping it because honestly, I can't take any more of these guys. This Mensa meeting has given me enough of a headache. The reality is that this last section is going to go into the whole victimhood thing. You know, oh, I'm being unfairly maligned. You know, I'm saying these things and people are being, it's the haters who are wrong. And the reality is there were some reasonable, sensible people who pointed out inconsistencies and problems with the argument being made. Not all of them were as snarky and as much of a jerk as I am when I'm going through a lot of the section of it. But that's because honestly, I've lost my patience with it. I'm listening to individuals who are not dumb. They're not stupid, but at the same time, they think the audience is. They're giving really atrociously bad and poorly conceived arguments, jumping around from one thing to another, shifting to, oh, but this example and that outlier case and this thing and that thing. And I'm sitting there going like, relevance. None of it is relevant. It's not that complex. You can avoid the entire conversation entirely if you don't bid on your own shit. And if you're consigning it and you've got an association or someone, don't talk to them about it. Don't encourage them to do anything. Leave them completely out of it. In a perfect world, they don't bid. They don't get within 1,000 miles of it. If they happen upon it on their own, well, then guess what? You've got plausible deniability because you didn't encourage it. You didn't invoke it. You didn't do anything. And then we can have the conversation at that time. The problem with the whole intent conversation is that intent is what we do after you've been caught. Intent is a defense. Intent is what you commit a murder. Intent is like, oh, I didn't intend to do that. It was an accident. That's what separates murder from manslaughter. It is the mitigating circumstances. It is the intention. It is the premeditation or not premeditation. I'm giving you an extreme example, but what I'm getting at is the reason there are different degrees, the reason why arguments are developed and built on it, is this is after you've been caught. After you've been caught is when you're starting to build the defense. You're talking about what the mitigating circumstances were. Was it self-defense? Was it an accident? Were you completely responsible at the time? All of these things come into play at that point. But before all that, we have the opportunity to just sit there and you can completely avoid this issue entirely by just listing your item or consigning your item and then putting your hands up and walking away. You don't need to deal with it. You don't need to. If you handed it off to a consignment company or an auction house, it's their job to promote it. It's their job to sell it. It's their job to do that. Now, you might have a network. You might have a platform. You might have a high profile. Fair enough. But that's where you run into this gray area. You walked into the gray area of your own volition. Leave it be. Let the market figure out where it's going to land. That's the part that separates it out. That's the reason you create this problem for yourself. It is when you decide, if you were just Joe Schmo and you didn't have a platform, you wouldn't be able to promote it to anybody anyway, necessarily. But when you got that platform, when you have that additional ability to do so, that's where you can put yourself into these interesting little situations. If you had just stayed out of it, listed, consigned, do whatever, and stay out of the way, whatever happens to the market, whether it goes for a record high, or whether they mislist it and they screw it up and whatever, if that happens, you go take it up with the consignor. You go take it up with the auction house. You go say, hey, you cost me this money because you listed it completely incorrectly. I need to be made whole. And maybe they do it or maybe they don't, but then you at least know who you need to deal with. That's who you need to deal with. It's not getting someone to bid on it somewhere or encouraging people, hey, it would be really swell if someone bid on this. Just avoid the issue entirely. Don't cut. You don't need to get into the nuances. We don't need to get into the weeds here trying to figure out all these mitigating circumstances. Why are we doing that? If you're the innocent party and you're not trying to do anything wrong, why are we already coming up with the excuses and the mitigating circumstances before we even started? This is my opinion. I don't understand why an innocent person is already coming up with their defense. I don't understand why that person is having to explain to you with great detail exactly what their intent was. Whenever I'm bidding on an auction, my intent is to win. Why is my intent to win? Because I want to buy the damn thing that I'm bidding on. That's my intent. It's very straightforward. It's simple because I'm finding the thing and then I'm bidding on it. Half the time I'm not really paying attention to who the seller is anyway. The only time it might be relevant to me is maybe I've dealt with them before, so maybe they'll combine shipping or whatever the case may be. Now, if I happen to know the seller, well, then I have to at least give it some thought. It's an opportunity for pause. It's a chance to sit back and go, hey, is there any issue with this? And by the way, sometimes you can be like, hey, do you have this cross-posted? Obviously, eBay frowns upon that, but let's be real. People do it all the time. People will ask, hey, do you have this cross-post? Because people have it cross-posted, especially certain things. They'll be in Facebook groups or they'll have that on their Instagram or whatever. And you reach out and you go, hey, you got this thing for sale. I'd like to buy it, whatever. You do the deal, whatever, you're done. It doesn't even involve the auction necessarily. But if it's in the auction, my opinion, what should happen is that the free market should have equal opportunity. Everybody should have a chance to bid whatever they feel is appropriate. And then the winner should pay for the item and we're done. I don't think that's overly complicated. I don't think that's a scandalous take. I could be wrong. Maybe that is a scandalous take. I don't believe it is, but anyway, that's it. Here you go. The mega church background has been provided. The will of the content gods has been given. That's it for this video. Hopefully there's no part 5. I don't know what I'm going to do. I might be out of gimmick. I might need a Pope costume if we get to part 5. I don't know what we're going to do. We need to move on as a people. But anyway, that's it for this video. More videos coming up the channel. Live streams on Friday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The longest running episodic, whatever it is. We will continue to speak the good word of the content gods because that's what we do around these parts. If you got any thoughts or comments, throw them in the comments section. Obviously, the last couple of videos have really had a lot of comments. So tell me I'm wrong. I might be. That's fine. Just tell me I'm wrong. Tell me why. But if you do and I'm wrong, tell me why. Also, at the same time, though, what do you think about the conversation? Do you agree with any of the thoughts that were included in there? Did any of that make any sense to you? Should we be doing this? Nodding a lot. Will that get us an invitation to the hobby dinner? These are the important questions that I need asked. These are the important questions that I need answered. Because otherwise, what are we going to do? Oh, and one other thing I didn't mention it. I was going to mention it during the playback of the whole thing. One of the things is like, see, bad form because we got our good friend Geoff. And in the background, if you had paid attention to the corner, actually, hold on. I'll still do a quick screen share just so you can see it. I was going to mention it during the playback, but I didn't. I forgot to. So if you look over his shoulder here, that's the first edition of the Beckett basketball magazine. See, the fix is in. It's all part of the PR campaign. The fix is in. He's in with Big Beckett. Anyway, so there you go. He didn't want to cross the sheriff. He didn't want to cross him. I understand. Like I said, more videos coming up on the channel. Friday live stream where we're the longest running episodic. We're going to talk about various things. We'll probably talk about this a little bit here, but for the most part, I think we're done with this for the moment. Hopefully, from what I understand, though, to be fair, somewhere in the distance, Eric is doing it. To be fair, I believe that Beckett is still scheduled to do the hobby hotline on the For Collectors YouTube channel on Saturday. I could be mistaken. I will double check on that. I'll confirm it. By Friday, I'll know for sure. But my understanding is I believe that is still scheduled. I believe that is this week upcoming. So if that happens this weekend, that might be an interesting little happening. So we'll see. Other than that, I got nothing more to add on this. I've said my piece and nothing. My opinion hasn't changed in the slightest. I was not swayed by the words of the sheriff. Alas. That all said, that's it for this one. Like if you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much, and we'll catch you in the next one.